Our assessment is the TACL-3, so the test for auditory comprehension of language, the third edition. So the purpose of the TACL is to assess individuals' ability to understand syntax of spoken language. So this provides an inventory of grammatical forms to observe a child's auditory comprehension behavior. And this can be used to identify individuals with receptive language disorders and can interpret that information how you would like to diagnose them. So the population the TACL looks at is kids between the ages of 3 years old and 9 years and 11 months. These kids must be able to understand the directions of the subtest and be able to formulate the necessary response, and they should also be familiar with printed pictures and forms. So the aspects of language and cognition assessed are auditory comprehension, language knowledge, which is the association between linguistically coded aspects of a spoken utterance and the meaning of these aspects to that specific individual. And also language performance, which is auditory perception, syntactic and lexical search, and semantic interpretation. So sometimes it can be hard to kind of figure out where this problem is, if it's language knowledge or language performance. So if it's a problem with language knowledge, they're going to have the failure to understand because they don't have the association between the linguistic form and its meaning, so that relationship is either not established or it's been lost. And if they have a problem with language performance, they're going to have a breakdown in processing language, so they'll just have the incorrect message. And so all of these kids will need functional cognition just to understand the directions of the TACL.
So the TACL manual states that the test will take approximately 20 to 30 minutes, and the examinee can work at his or her own pace, but the manual does encourage rapid progress. It suggests that if it takes up to 10 seconds for a response, the examiner should encourage a response, and if none is given at that point, the item should be scored as incorrect or a 0 and move on, just so that the assessment doesn't take too long. For the setting, the environment is suggested to be quiet, comfortable, and non-distracting. And materials required are the picture book of stimulus plates, the profile or examiner record booklet, the examiner's manual, and a writing utensil, and the manual suggests a sharpened pencil with an eraser. For the normative sample, 1,102 people were included. They were aged 3 years to 9 years and 11 months. Testing occurred in 1997 and included 24 states. So you can take a look at the list of all of the states. They were meant to represent each of the 4 major U.S. geographic regions. Data shows that the sample is representative of the U.S. population. And this can be seen in the next several tables. The first shows the age and gender of the subjects in the normative sample. So this table breaks it down into the 3 different age groups. You can see the total number of males and females and then the percentage of the sample that they represent. So for 3 to 4-year-olds, 52% were male and 48% were female, and the rest of the table follows that format. These tables show the disability status and also the educational attainment of the parents of the subjects in the normative sample, and you can see that for each, the percentage of the sample approximately matches the percentage of the U.S. population in 1997. This table shows the ethnic origin and race of the people in the sample, and again you can see that the percentage of the sample and the percentage of the U.S. population in 1997 were approximately equal. Sensitivity and specificity information was not given in the assessment manual. Other validity measurements were used, and we'll talk about that in a little while. The fact that these aren't included is something that should be considered when choosing this assessment to diagnose a language disorder.
So we also looked at reliability. This was based off of Cronbach's coefficient alpha. For that, the criterion for acceptable reliability is 0.8, and for the TACL, the average alpha was 0.97, and 92% of them reached 0.9. So as we can see, they reach an acceptable range. They also tested for reliability within subgroups for different genders and races, and these two also fell in the acceptable range for 0.92 to 0.98. And then using the test-retest method, they also assessed for time sampling, and they found that it was stability over time, or stable over time. Finally, the TACL also assessed for interscore differences for reliability overall. For reliability, content sampling, time sampling, interscore reliability, it all found that it was a highly reliable test. For validity, they did content description validity. So they considered many different factors from each subtest to ensure it was valid. For example, in subtest 2, they looked at short and simple sentences to ensure they were developmentally appropriate for anyone being assessed. In addition to this, what pictures were used were carefully chosen in order to avoid depicting culture, sex, age, and race bias. And they also looked at what order they were placed in to ensure no one spot on the test booklet had more spots than the other. For criterion prediction validity, the TACL was compared to the comprehensive, receptive, and expressive vocabulary test. After assessing 23 elementary students using both tests, the scores were compared, and it was found that the TACL is a valid test, especially when comparing to the CREVT receptive subtest. For construct identification validity, they looked at age differentiation, group differentiation, and then in addition to this, they also looked at interrelationships as well as item validity and factor analysis. And combining all of these different validity tests, they found that it was also a highly valid test. Finally, we also looked at the diagnostic evaluation checklist. It was found that the TACL identified the normal sample quite clearly. They gave the number of children tested, as we kind of went over earlier, what states they were from, as well as what geographic area, their gender, race, ethnicity, disability status, age, and educational level. So that clearly described it, and it also kind of mapped out their disorder. However, it didn't really list much about their severity levels or confusable symptoms, and it also did not compare it to a gold standard, so the rest of the table was not able to be filled out. For test administration for the TACL, each child is shown a page as shown on the slide. They're introduced to each stimulus by using the phrase "show me" and then "show me the wagon," and then they would be expected to point to the wagon. You begin the test with example items so the child has practice responding to them. If they get the first example right, then the other examples don't have to be practiced. If they get all 3 examples wrong, then the test should not be administered. The stimulus for each page should not be given more than once unless the child is below 5 years old. It can be repeated if there was no response within 10 seconds, as we also talked about earlier. The child should be encouraged to point to the picture they believe is the answer. If more than one picture is pointed to, they should be asked to respond with only one answer, and you should score their correction. If they point to more than one picture again, the response should be recorded as incorrect.
Administration of the test should begin at the first item for every subtest, regardless of the child's age. And then for each subtest, testing should be discontinued when the child incorrectly answers 3 consecutive items. And that's the ceiling. Some example test items from subtest number 1 are show me cat. The correct answer would be C, which is the image all the way to the right. Item 25 is show me caught. The correct answer would be letter C, also the image all the way to the right. And number 45, descending. The correct answer is also C, all the way to the right. And we have a video example of subtest number 1.
Show me cat. Show me bird. Show me girl.
Subtest 2 is grammatical morphemes. This subtest assesses the child's use or understanding of plurals, past tense, prepositions, present progressive ing, pronoun, and verb agreement. So item number 1, the cat is in the box. The correct answer would be A, the item all the way to the left. Number 15, he rode the bicycle. Correct answer is B, the item in the middle. And number 44, the girl said, "We are eating popcorn." And the correct answer is B, the image in the middle. And here's a video of subtest 2.
Show me the cat is in the box. Show me the cat is off the toothpaste. Show me the boy is beside the car.
Subtest 3 is elaborated phrases and sentences. This assesses the child's understanding of longer phrases and sentences, multiple clauses, and more complex sentence structures. Item 1 is a big blue ball. The correct answer is B, the picture in the middle. 23, she shows the boy the girl. The correct answer is A, the item to the left. 48, before taking the packages to the post office, he had to wrap them. And the correct answer is A, the item to the left. To score the test, correct answers are given a 1, incorrect answers are given a score of 0, and if the child does not respond, the item is also given a 0. If the child says, "I don't know," it is counted as incorrect, or if they point between 2 or point to 1 and then change their mind, ask the question once more and then score their final answer. The scores that the test yields are a raw score, which is the total number of items that the child answered correctly for each subtest. And there's also an age equivalent score given, which is the child's score compared to the average score for children of their age or other ages at 6-month age intervals. But the authors of this assessment do note that age equivalent scores are problematic, but it is necessary to report some of these for educational agencies and school system purposes. Percentile rank is another score that is given, and this is the percentage of the standardization score or sample who scored at or below the child's score. So for example, a percentile of 65 means that 65% of the standardization sample scored at or below the child's score. Standard scores are converted from raw scores to allow comparisons to be made across subtests. The TACL has a mean of 10 and a standard deviation of 3 when using standard scores, and each standard score has a descriptive rating ranging from very poor to very superior. And here is a list of the standard scores and descriptive ratings. A composite quotient is also given by adding all of the subtest standard scores and converting the sub into a quotient. And in this way, the TACL has a mean of 100 and a standard deviation of 15. Each composite quotient also has a descriptive rating.